Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thought her signature verbal ambush would leave Karoline Leavitt flustered and defensive. But instead, AOC was left stunned. The producers of the American Forum had pitched it as a simple panel, a spotlight on rising female voices in politics, bridging generational and ideological gaps. Karoline Leavitt's team was told it would be a collaborative discussion about leadership, not confrontation. But the energy backstage told a different story. Even before the cameras started rolling, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Tonight, Marcus Chen began as the cameras went live, we bring together two trailblazers who represent the future of American political leadership. Please welcome Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Karoline Leavitt. The applause was clearly skewed toward AOC. As Leavitt took her seat, she offered a genuine smile to her counterpart, who responded with a tight-lipped smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We're glad you're here, Karoline, Marcus continued. You've been vocal lately about political polarization among young Americans. What are your thoughts on that trend? Leavitt nodded thoughtfully. I think most people, especially young voters, are tired of shouting matches. They want real solutions, whether it's mental health, education, or the economy. My goal is to create space where we can talk without caricaturing each other. She paused, glancing briefly at AOC. I've spent the last year traveling to college campuses across the country, and you know what I hear consistently? Students saying they feel like they can't express their views openly, regardless of which side they're on. That's not healthy for democracy. Caricatures, AOC repeated with a chuckle, the word dripping with skepticism. That's rich coming from someone whose entire brand is built on echoing talking points from 2016. Leavitt kept her gaze steady. Could you clarify what you mean? She asked, her voice level. Well, AOC said, shifting in her chair with confidence. I mean, look at your messaging. It's like someone printed out the RNC's greatest hits and handed them to you. Tax cuts, small government, personal responsibility. It's all very 2016. She gestured dismissively. It's cute, almost like watching a political cosplay. Honestly, it's hard to take you seriously when you sound like you're reading from a script. You sound like a joke. Marcus looked stunned. This wasn't political disagreement. This was character assassination. Leavitt blinked once slowly, processing what had just happened. In that moment, she made a choice. She could respond with equal venom, or she could do something different. She leaned slightly forward, her voice remaining calm but carrying new weight. Congresswoman, she began, and the formal address seemed to reset the entire dynamic of the room. You just called me a joke on national television, not because of what I believe, but because of how I say it. She paused for just a moment. That's disappointing, especially coming from someone who claims to stand for women, for working-class voices, for those outside the establishment. You don't get to preach about empathy and inclusion while mocking people for not sounding exactly like you. The studio fell silent. AOC's confident smirk faltered slightly. You know, when your team invited me here, Leavitt continued, I was told this was going to be a conversation about leadership. So I came ready to talk about policy, like the bipartisan effort my team's working on to improve mental health access for high schoolers, or the coalition of women on both sides of the aisle who are joining forces to improve maternal care in rural America. AOC shifted in her seat, perhaps beginning to realize that her attack had backfired. I came here with notes about the teenagers in my district who are struggling with anxiety and depression, about the working mothers who drive an hour each way to the nearest hospital when they're giving birth, about the small business owners who want to provide health insurance to their employees but can't afford the current system. But if this is just a performance, Leavitt added, meeting AOC's eyes directly, that's fine too. Just be honest about it. Marcus cleared his throat. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, would you like to respond? AOC hesitated, clearly realizing she had miscalculated. Sure. I just think we need to hold each other accountable, and sometimes that means being blunt about where we stand. It was a weak recovery, and everyone in the room knew it. Blunt is different from dismissive, Leavitt replied smoothly. Blunt is saying, I disagree with you, And here's why. Dismissive is calling someone a joke because they don't meet your aesthetic standard of what political seriousness looks like. There was more applause now, louder and more sustained. Even some of the audience members who had cheered loudest for AOC's entrance were clapping. Marcus redirected with renewed purpose. Karoline, you mentioned bipartisan work earlier. Could you tell us more about that mental health initiative? Absolutely, Leavitt said. And for the first time since sitting down, she looked genuinely excited. We're bringing together educators, tech leaders, and legislators from both parties to create age-appropriate online safety standards and comprehensive school-based mental health support systems. She turned to face the audience more directly. Here's what we know. Teenage anxiety and depression rates have skyrocketed, particularly since 2012 when smartphone usage became ubiquitous. But instead of just pointing fingers at social media companies, we're building solutions. As she spoke, the audience grew more attentive. There was a tangible change in the room. Even AOC seemed to be listening more closely now. We've already met with over 30 members of Congress, including several Democrats. This isn't about scoring political points. It's about the fact that suicide is now the second leading cause of death among Americans aged 15 to 24. And for what it's worth, Leavitt added, turning back toward AOC, I'd welcome your input on this project, Congresswoman. You've been a strong advocate for mental health resources, and your voice carries weight with exactly the communities we're trying to reach. Because these aren't red issues or blue issues, they're human ones. The offer hung in the air. AOC looked genuinely surprised, perhaps expecting continued confrontation rather than an invitation to collaborate. I appreciate that, she said slowly. Mental health access is something I care deeply about. I know it is, Leavitt replied simply. I've read your work on it. By the time the segment moved into its final phase, the energy in the room had completely flipped. Marcus asked both women about their shared experiences as young women in politics. For the first time, they found common ground in their shared frustrations with older male colleagues who questioned their expertise. You know, AOC said during this exchange, I think we probably agree on more than we initially thought. I think you're right, Leavitt replied. Maybe the real divide isn't between left and right, but between people who actually want to solve problems and people who just want to score points. As the segment drew to a close, the audience gave a full standing ovation, not the partisan cheering that had marked the beginning, but sustained, genuine applause that seemed to acknowledge they had witnessed something rare.